Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Wave Global. My name is Nauraiz Rana, and I'll be hosting today's program, in which we will be. Today's a special episode. Let me start away with the disclosure, in which we will be discussing the constitutional and judicial crisis that Pakistan finds itself currently in the midst of. And for this discussion, I have a very special guest who needs no introduction, but as part of formalities, I would still like to introduce and welcome Mr. Muhammad Zubair Umar, who has served as the 32nd Governor of Sindh. He was the Minister of Privatization between 2013 and 2017, and has also been a key member of the Pakistan Muslim League, Noon, Nawaz, with which he parted ways very recently. And we'll delve a bit into that as well. But before, sir, I turn to you, I just want to quickly set the stage of what our discussion is going to be. A new law is in the works, the constitutional bill, which would actually question the trichotomy of power, and which has the ability to inflict an irreversible dent on Pakistan's democratic process as well as the independence of judiciary. And it all starts with the fact that it's been in the works since Justice Faiz Isa was encountering some hurdles in his extension, and the government found a workaround, according to the bill, a new federal constitution court will be set up. The government will have the power to transfer justices belonging to the High Court. And there are other provisions which highlight the fact that we're stripping away the powers and the autonomy of the justice system. In principle, the appointment of the Chief Justice of the new court that is being proposed will lie in the hands of the Prime Minister and the President. Again, it really, violates the sanctity of the trichotomy of power between the executive, the legislature, and the judicial parts of Pakistan. So my very first question to you is that how do you view all of this crisis that is brewing? What are the likely implications that, if it is actually passed, that it would have on Pakistan?
First, thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, Pakistan is facing a constitutional crisis, but Pakistan is always in some crisis. I mean, whether it's economic crisis, constitutional crisis, legal crisis, political crisis, you name it. So I can't say we are blessed with facing crisis, but we have become so used to it that some of all these major challenges come, and we think that in the worst case, we will still survive. Like in the economics front, when we talk about surviving, it means that are we going to avoid default? And that's what the key parameter of economic management is, that so far we are able to negotiate something from IMF.
We've not defaulted.
That will mean that. So the same is true of this thing. This is far more deadly in the scope. It alters the fundamentals of our constitution, the 1973 constitution, both in terms of reality and in terms of the spirit of it, which you mentioned that basically our constitution, and rightly so, basically the objective is to have a parliament which is supreme, sovereign, and it has the right to pass laws, whatever laws it deems fit. At the same time, we have the judiciary, which is supposed to be independent of the executive, completely independent of the executive, which means that it is no more subservient to the executive. It is not dependent on the executive favors. It can take decisions without fearing any reaction from the government. It takes decision without thinking that tomorrow I will be up competing for the Chief Justice of the Federal Court or any other court, because the government is going to appoint, and therefore I should not take any decisions which make the government unhappy about my decisions. So it has to be absolutely independent. The same is true of the media, that it must be independent. And that is the beauty of the system, of the democratic system, that there is a check and balance system. There is a judiciary sitting on top of the executive. There is media right or wrong, ready to criticize the government in any way that it deems with. Then there's a concept of the political opposition within the parliament and outside the parliament that must represent that segment of the population that has not voted for the treasury benches. And it must raise those issues which are crucial to the people of Pakistan, so that the people of Pakistan can feel confident that somewhere I am being protected. Like, so there's a judiciary and I can knock on the doors and I can feel comfortable about being listened to, whether it is a personal matter or a political matter or anything like that. So that this takes away fundamentally the entire thing by creating the federal court and making all cases, the constitutional cases and political cases transferred from the Supreme Court. Means that the Supreme Court becomes a toothless organization. It will decide about the land disputes and things like that. Other than that, it has no role. And the government will have the ability to appoint like-minded judges to the federal court. So, like, for example, what happens, and the government was very concerned about the fact that the changes in October with regard to the change in the Chief Justice from Justice Wise to Justice Mansoor, Khwaja Asif expressed that concern about 2 months ago when it said that PTI is depending on the changes in October, after which they think, and he didn't say rightly think, that Justice Mansoor will not block in any way the process of finding out the truth about 2024 elections, whether it is a composition of the tribunals or whether it is the independent judges being appointed on those tribunals, and the decision-making process will be passed, which is completely blocked for now, as you can see, because after 7 months of the elections, we have not yet even been able to find out the truth about one seat. So if 7 months cannot decide, and in most cases, it's a very simple mathematical calculation. I mean, there are Form 45s, which are issued by each of the polling stations. And if there are 300 polling stations, you have 300 Form 45. The total of that Form 45, 300 Form 45 must equal Form 47. It's a basic, very simple 6th grade mathematical question. And if we can't solve it, despite 7 months, you can imagine. And the reason that we have not been able to, Justice Faisal has been able to block any effort towards the tribunals, because the concept was that in Punjab, for example, where the main irregularities and especially the quantum of the irregularities is affects both the whether the present ruling elite in the Punjab as well as in Islamabad will be able to retain its majority is up for grabs. And that is only possible that if there are tribunals which are not given once they come near to take a decision, for example, and the decision is to be announced the following day, like it happened in the 3 National Assembly constituencies of Islamabad, and it was blocked. And instead, the judge who was going to make the decision, who had expressed very clearly which way he's going to go, he finds himself that his BA degree back in 30 years ago in Karachi University is being investigated, and the board was called to say that this degree is fake, and therefore he could not have been the judge in the first place. So just to tell him that you go this way, we have the other way to go against you.
Absolutely.
So I think this is so difficult to absorb why the government would think on such short-term basis without regard to the long-term interests of the people of Pakistan.
So I think you've hit the nail in the coffin, like directly the right spot, that the fact that it's not official, but unofficially we've seen that Justice Faiz Issa's has been aligned with the current ruling government. His judgment, especially when he stripped PTI of their electoral symbol, and then after that, when the bench was formed to reevaluate that, he was one of the 5 judges who ruled against the PTI. His judgments tend to favor the political party. And the other things that you just highlighted and mentioned, the fact that if this constitution bill is passed, then it strips the power of the apex court, the Supreme Court. It renders it absolutely obsolete. It will only be left to address issues and cases pertaining to menial things. It can no longer touch upon constitutional and political issues. And secondly, if the federal constitution court is formed, then it becomes another arm, an extension of the government itself, because its appointment is by the prime minister, by the president. They can appoint whosoever, form the entire bench by themselves. They would obviously rule in favor of the government, at the sitting government at that time. And then, the entire issue about transfer of high court judges, again, it's transforming judiciary into a bureaucracy. And, in theory and in practice, judiciary should not be an arm of the government. But these are very fascist measures, to say so. And I remember we met at a conference in London a while ago, and I spoke to you, and very candidly you said that when you did join PMLN, the reason you joined PMLN was because you felt that they were on the right side of history. They stood up for the rule of law, they stood up for the constitution. And then when you parted ways, when you distanced themselves, you found that there was a shift happening in PMLN's policy. So they were again violating every rule that they stood for. Are you disappointed that we know that these are fascist measures? This will push the country years back. How do you feel that, like how disappointed are you that so many people are still endorsing it, are still
It is
pushing for
very,
it to go through?
it is very, very disappointing. Pakistan is it's not a normal European type country or like United States or basically where democratic traditions are very strong and people care between right and wrong and uh, they do understand that because the power does not bring the kind of perks and privileges that it brings in a country like Pakistan. It's like if you don't get the power, all is lost. So if you have power, then it means you benefit enormously in every aspect of the life, from financial aspect to other aspects, your family, your next generation, and so on and so forth. So losing power is not an option for a politician in Pakistan. And that's exactly what happened in the 2024 elections. And before that, after the vote of no confidence, that PMLN got itself into such a mess where it lost the popular support of the people, especially in Punjab, where it matters most. And suddenly it found itself that the decision to go for vote of no confidence was a political disaster for them. And within a matter of 3 months after the vote of no confidence in a by-election over 20 seats in Punjab, the PMLN lost 16 seats, which was the first time such a heavy defeat since PMLN started its electoral politics back in the 80s. So, and since then, every by-election that took place during the 16 months of the former PTM government, PTI was winning that election. So it was no surprise that when the 2024 election took place, despite the heavy odds against PTI, and everyone was surprised, including myself, if you ask me, that people will come out with such large numbers, especially after the decision of Justice Faiz to take back the symbol of bat against the PTI candidates. By the way, again, one of the very poor decision, that was one of the worst decisions, whatever. But subsequently, when a constitutional petition was being heard against the election commission by the PTI people, Justice Faiz, along with the other Justice Faiz especially, says that the election commission had misinterpreted the decision of the January decision where the symbol was taken back. He says, when did I say that PTI is not a party? Now, if PTI is not a party, an election commission misinterpreted, according to the Chief Justice, then the entire electoral process is dubious. It means it is wrong. It means it was not conducted in a manner that Justice Faiz is not now saying that you interpret a decision whereby you said, no, you are independent, you don't belong to PTI. And then the mess started, and therefore the mess of the reserve seats and all of those things that followed after the elections. So it was Justice Faiz who has to take the blame for the mess and the misinterpretation and everything. Of course, the election commission was going hand in glove with whatever the establishment and the superior judiciary, Chief Justice especially wanted. So first thing is that we got into this mess in the first place because of him. The other thing, let me also say about this process of this amendment. For me, because this is not a true representative of the people of Pakistan, it does not have the right to amend the constitution in the manner that it's. It does not even have the right to make any change in a bill of a very small nature. Okay. So it does not represent the people of Pakistan. How can it go ahead with making such fundamental changes to the constitution of Pakistan? It is just like abrogating or suspending the constitution.
Absolutely.
Second thing, it is not complete even. The National Assembly is not complete because according to the judgment of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, it 8-2 in favor of PTI, that the reserve seats should go to PTI. Those reserve seats have not yet gone, despite another clarification from the Supreme Court last week. So it is an incomplete assembly. Then the Senate of Pakistan is not complete because the senators from KP Assembly have not yet been elected even after 6 months. The reason that they have not been elected, and there are 12 of them that will go to the Senate, which is significant number considering the total strength is 100, and 12, almost 11 of them will be from PTI. The reason is that the KP Assembly is not complete because the reserved seat case is not yet completed, because the reserved seats have to go to PTI according to the Supreme Court judgment. Election Commission has not yet implemented. KP Assembly is without those reserved seats. Therefore, the election for the KP Senate have not yet taken place. So you are making amendments of this proportion without the Parliament being complete in its true form. Even if we disregard the dubious electoral results and rigging and everything that has taken place. So, I mean, and just to remind you that in 2019, the Parliament passed an amendment which basically allowed the army chief to remain, could be depending on the government wishes, that the age limit was extended from 60 years to 64 years. That was obviously to facilitate General Bajwa to be extended. PMLN, despite being in the opposition at that time, supported that. And subsequently, after the passing of the bill, until today, 95% of the PMLN and senior leadership, they regret publicly that they should not have gone through. Mariam Nawaz has gone to the extent of saying that she was not part of this guna. So you can imagine how much everyone was trying to come out of that thing without being obviously labeled that why did you go ahead with enabling the army chief to remain army chief for another 3 years after you have obviously said that he is the person who is responsible for all the mess that PMLN faced. So yes, it is very, very disappointing that PMLN is doing whatever it is doing.
Yeah, and exactly like you said, it's very short-sighted just to hang on to power for the next couple of years. Such drastic measures are being proposed that would actually change and alter the course of history. Not the course of history, but alter the course of future in Pakistan and literally push it backwards. And I mean, and you've rightly said that everything like the passing of this bill or the proposing of this bill is very unconstitutional because you don't have the right numbers in the assembly at the moment. The reserve seats are yet to be implemented, and the election commission is employing delaying tactics and is not enforcing those because then the numbers would automatically tilt. And this is why a body like the Supreme Court is so instrumental, and it needs to be autonomous, because in measures like this, unconstitutional measures like this, it tends to enforce a check and a balance approach. It makes sure that the laws are not violated. But in this case, let's assume that unconstitutionally, but they're still able to pass the bill. And then they set up a federal constitution court. And now, according to the bill, every constitutional matter will go to that new court. But what about this instance? Where does it leave the actual Supreme Court of Pakistan? Will the Supreme Court decide whether this entire bill was made in an unconstitutional manner or the body itself? Because then there's a conflict of interest. It's so complicated and it's so convoluted, that the entire mess that is being created. Can this be struck down?
I think we have not seen the reaction yet from the Supreme Court, and many people are many senior lawyers are already pushing the Supreme Court to take suo motu action under Article 184(3), which is basically to preempt the passing
And
of the bill by the Supreme
absolutely.
Court. Munir Malik is a former Attorney General and former President of Supreme Court Bar Association, and several others have called the Supreme Court that this is the time to fight back. And this is the time to fight back, not just by the Supreme Court judges, but the High Court judges, by the legal community, the civil society, the students, and everyone has to play a role. This is exactly, and this that was much less compared to what is coming up as the proposed amendment. When in November 2007, General Nauraiz Musharraf came up with the emergency, and obviously then the legal community, led by the legal community and the civil society, the campaign was started and launched, and I think it went on for several months and maybe more than a year, and forced General Musharraf to resign ultimately.
Absolutely.
And it was that was to block. The reason that General Musharraf imposed emergency was that he was contesting the election for the President of Pakistan in uniform, and the Supreme Court, in his view, was to strike down the possibility that he could be the president in uniform. And fearing that reaction, he imposed emergency. This is exactly what it is right now. That you fear that a lot of things will open up, and the ability to extend the rule till 5 years. And by the way, it is not yet. It is not just about the next 4 years or 5 years that they are thinking. They want to shut out Imran Khan from the politics of Pakistan. That's basically the objective, and it's not just for another 4 years or so. So they want to ensure that he's phased out completely.
Yeah, they can actually ban PTI from politics as well, because that was the case that was being brewed and created. And then if a federal court is created, Faiz Isa becomes the Chief Justice of the Federal Constitution Court. And then there's complete, you can do whatever. It's literally the jungle's law then.
I mean, I'll just give for your audience another draconian law, which is part of the proposed amendment, is the way the election commission will be appointed and can be extended. They can be, so the present election commission, if and when this amendment is passed, can be extended for another 5 years. So imagine this election commission, which has wrecked Pakistan completely, which is not ready to even implement a clear-cut decision of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. I mean, will be given extension, and no court can hear that as a challenge. After the Prime Minister and the President combined together to extend the term. Now, I mean, if it is, then it is basically you will be run not on the basis of any constitution, but on the whims of and the interest of the ruling elite as such. So whatever you would like to do. And the other misconception that is being presented, that the Parliament has the right to make laws. Yes, it has, but there is a limitations to what extent that they can go. If the Parliament decides today that the 1973 Constitution is abrogated, and the present ruling elite of the present Parliament will run the country based on its own way of thinking, or on the British style of things, that they don't have a written constitution. You cannot do that in Pakistan. So there is a limitation. It has to be a federal parliamentary system, and it has to have a check and balance and everything. So there has to be a limitation. And the fundamental, like I said in the beginning, is the independence of judiciary, which is a check and balance on the government to what it can do and what it cannot do. And in a country like Pakistan, which has a VIP culture where the egos and the demands and the desires of the ruling elite are such that they should have no limitation and there should be no check and balance, it is more fundamental. Because if you give example of, say, UK, for example, or Switzerland, I mean, it's a completely different society than what it is in Pakistan. And we have known, I mean, here is a country which, despite the fact that there is Article 6 and you can't have military intervention, yet has gone ahead, and there have been 4 military interventions in the country. Uh, uh, in in this, if you consider that all the governments, like between 88 and 99, 5 governments got dismissed, 4 on the basis of 58 2B, and 99 government on the basis of military interventions. I mean, this is a different society. You have to have check and balance. If you don't have check and balance, the government, I mean, will be ruined. I mean, there will be Pakistan, the concept as such of a constitutional, which India formulated in 1949 or something in Pakistan, is still struggling the kind of constitution that we should have.
Absolutely. I mean, it's basically like you're very much stripping away the freedom of the people, because you're transforming the democracy entirely. When the judges are being appointed by the prime minister, when the election commission is being appointed by the prime minister, then it goes beyond conflict of interest. It's basically you're obliging them to be part of the same system, rather than, where technically the public, the people, tend to enforce those mechanisms. There's the check, there's the mechanism to ensure whether they want the same group of people to govern them or not. And you mentioned Munir Malik. That was going to be my next question. It is being said that Lawyers Movement 2.0 is forming, the first being in 2007. And now Munir Malik and a lot of other people from the law community have already come out and said that after October 25th, when Justice Faizi is meant to retire, on October 26th, they will accept and only accept Justice Mansoor Ali Shah as the Chief Justice of Pakistan, not only as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, but of Pakistan. That means, constitutionally as well as politically, all matters will still remain with the apex judicial body, being the Supreme Court. And do you think that this law movement, I guess, will be able to pull back all these unconstitutional moves that are being created or being orchestrated at that moment? Do you think the pressure is being created, and can we be hopeful that we can be absolved of this draconian law, we can be saved?
I think over the years, Pakistan has also gone through a fundamental change in terms of how people react to even black laws or unfair things that are happening, and the fact that governments have imposed themselves through fraudulent elections and so on and so forth, and many things where normally people would have come out. And Pakistan has a history going back to 1968, for example, when Ayub Khan was all powerful and the military backed a field marshal president. And yet, despite the fact that there was no social media and there was no independent and private electronic media, yet people came out, and in a matter of just about 3 months, he was forced to quit. That was a great PNA movement in 1977. After the fraudulent elections in March 1977, again, people came out in large numbers on a consistent basis. And I mean, that was unfortunate that instead of giving way to the people's demand, martial law was imposed, and Pakistan obviously went from bad to worse over the next following 11 years. 2007 again was a immediate reaction. Itazaz Ehsan was leading the lawyers, and Munir Malik and Hamid Khan and several other people were involved, who are still there. Whether they will be able to bring out people, because it's not so simple, because at least as far as this particular government is concerned, whether it's Punjab government or whether it is federal government, they have decided immediately once PDM came into power, and an apparent decision that put down any kind of dissent. People come out in a peaceful manner and just go after them, and whatever it needs to be done. The 2007 movement, General Pervez Musharraf did not impose any such thing. People were allowed to come out, and there was obviously no fear that people are coming and staging demonstrations in different parts of Pakistan. And so the kind of decisions that have been taken over the last 4 years, and even now, if there's a peaceful protest by the students, for example, or by the lawyers in Lahore or in Islamabad. Islamabad already, you have you must have heard the law that has been promulgated that if the approval is not given to stage any demonstration or a public rally, then you will be liable for a 3-year imprisonment. And if you repeat it second time, then it draws you a 10-year imprisonment. I mean, that is the kind of law that is already there in Islamabad. So it can easily be extended to the rest of the country. But without even the law being there, all you need to do is to have tear gas shelling. And so it's not as the same as it used to be. And people obviously have suffered over the last few years and become more conscious of the fact. One of the problems also is that a large support base comes from the middle class, urban educated, and those are salaried guys and working people and businessmen and so on. So to expect them to come and get arrested is not that simple. I mean, obviously the family is dependent on that. No matter how much they hate this government, their families obviously would not allow them to go to the extent where there's a fear of being arrested or being beaten up brutally and so on. So I don't know whether such a thing can be successful or not. But then you can't write it off, because we have seen in Bangladesh where hundreds of people were killed and still the movement went on.
Absolutely. I was able to topple like the decades-old power autonomy of Sheikh Hasina. But I know this is very fair. And to be honest, you've all mentioned the possibility of this manifesting or not. And the thing is that even in recent history, if you look at the crackdown post May 9th, I'm not going into the argument whether that was right or wrong, but just focusing on the crackdown, the events that happened, we've seen it was very strong-handed. The way the people were subjected by the state, there are very few examples seen even in Pakistan's history of such a treatment, including the treatment that was subjected to women, to elderly. It was, again, quite scary to face.
Again, the question was, as far as the ruling elite is concerned, they've used May 9th only for political purposes. Because if there was a legal case, there would have been convictions. Almost 1.5 years later, we find no conviction as yet. And number of those who have been arrested, like Dr. Yasmin Rashid and Mahmood Rashid, Shah Mahmood Qureshi and others are still in jails without being convicted. And then a nation has to learn how to deal. We all agree today that the reason for the country's disintegration or the independence of Bangladesh was entirely on our decision making. No one talks about the fact that after the assembly was indefinitely called off by General Yahya Khan, the Bengalis supporting Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, which is almost the entire East Pakistan, went into a situation of civil disobedience, which is also very unruly and led to many brutal deaths of the people from West Pakistan, including the army people. And as a reaction or whatever, on March 26th, the Pakistan army then went on a crackdown. And the justification was that what were the Bengalis did. But later on, as we realized, reading the history, that was their reaction of civil disobedience was a result that started in first week of March. The elections had taken place 4 months earlier, and the assembly had not yet taken place. They had won the majority. The mandate was not accepted. The mandate, the power was not transferred. So I always say that you have to look at the things in a broader perspective. If May 9th was bad and there were people involved in it, what about February 8th? Who were the people who were involved in that brutal stealing of the mandate? And that's far more serious. And it was spread across the length and breadth of Pakistan, over 1,000 constituencies in provincial assemblies, in national assembly, and all over. And the way, in the manner, and they go completely scot-free and unmentioned that something big had happened. So the justification is very simple. The justification is whether this is about the amendments, whether it is about the stealing of the February elections. We are generally good people. We think good of Pakistan. Those guys, Imran Khan and others, they don't think good of Pakistan. We think good of Pakistan. And therefore, in order to ensure that the bad guys don't come to power, we should be allowed to do all the bad things, whether it is stealing of the electoral process or anything like that. And that is what the logic sometimes is when you're sitting in private sessions that, look, Imran Khan cannot be allowed to come back. And this is what I say has been the real setback in Pakistan's history. Pakistani elite or the ruling class first does not look at the constitution. What is the constitutional requirement? They look at the person first and then say, oh, if we hold free, fair and transparent election, then Mujibur Rahman will come into power. Therefore, he must be denied. And if we don't hang Bhutto, go to the extent of hanging Bhutto, who's a bad guy, then obviously Pakistan cannot afford Bhutto to come back into power because of the mess that he had done during his rule. And the same was then Benazir, then was Nawaz Sharif, and then now Imran Khan. So constitution can go and do whatever, but Imran Khan has to be stopped because we are the good guys. And even if Khwaja Asif has won through a dubious election, my opponent won by more than 40,000 votes, so be it, because I am better than that woman. That woman doesn't know. I think good about Pakistan. And this is the logic about it. And that is why the importance or the significance of the constitution just goes back, and people wonder what... and the same Imran Khan, as we have seen in Pakistan's history, 10 years ago, 6 years ago, it was Nawaz Sharif who was the bad guy, who was to be denied coming into power by hook or by crook, whatever it takes, whether it was Panama judgment or whatever. And today, the same people, the same establishment is obviously has changed. So the whole nation was told to that the direction that Pakistan needs to take is towards the south. And now we are being told, no, actually, please turn back. And this is the way that Pakistan must have its direction. I mean, it's not a small matter. And people of Pakistan obviously are confused what exactly. And during this process, the thinking of the people of Pakistan has gone. They have become totally dejected, disappointed with the state of affairs.
Absolutely right. And Pakistan already has been in a very fragile state, like politically. It's been so polarized, and especially, after the events of the way the 2024 elections were conducted, it highlighted the fact, it really put forth big questions on the rightfulness of the current government. And now everything that is being orchestrated.
Can we take the last question?
Yes. Sorry. So I was saying that you're absolutely right. Like, Pakistan is already very fragile. Like, politically, there's been so much polarization, and especially after the election of 2024, how we see that it led to legitimate questions being raised on the authenticity and the legality of the current government, has further led to greater mistrust from the people of Pakistan. And now everything that is being done, this judicial crisis, is to make sure that the same people who came to power on questionable terms are allowed and able to stay on, regardless of what the constitution says and what the people of Pakistan says. So I want to ask, would you say, like, agreed, we started the topic and you said that Pakistan is always in a state of crisis. Rightly so, there's always one crisis or the other. But do you think that this is actually a very tipping point, that this is one of the biggest crises that Pakistan finds itself on? Because a lot of people will not realize that if everything is passed as per this proposed bill, then it means that we have the same set of people who will be illegally ruling Pakistan for God knows the next 10 or 15 years.
Actually, it is not the greatest challenge, but the fact of the matter is that Pakistan has had such big challenges, like, for example, the imposition of the martial law in 1958 and the banning of all the politicians who were there at that point in time was a big crisis. I mean, the constitution, which was formulated after 9 years of efforts, was obviously finished, abrogated. So there have been, you can go through the history of Pakistan and you see that. Now, after 70 plus years, 77 years, people have become far more dejected because this is not the first time that is happening. And they see that this process will continue with regular cycles. And this is not a new cycle. If this was a new cycle and many people would they say that we must have some hope, and I say the hope would be if Pakistan is slowly, if not fully, moving towards a democratic order. But the situation today is that the non-democratic forces are totally involved in the decision-making process like never before. And that is Pakistan has moved one step forward as far as democracy is concerned and two steps backwards. So Pakistan finds itself today in the worst situation. We are not moving forward. If the trend was there, even if slowly and surely, yes, we are moving towards a democratic order. And if people had that logic that you can't just one day, within a matter of few years, become completely democratic and the establishment would take a back seat and go back to the barracks, it won't happen overnight. But the fact of the matter is that is it getting better or is it getting worse? It has got worse. And that is the negative aspect of this whole thing. So the hope for the people of Pakistan, especially the urban middle class educated, which is the main composition of any country, which can lead any economic growth activity, is completely dejected. If you ask the students in universities, for example, the choice if they want to go out, and if allowed through a visa process, I think 99% of them will go out, except those belonging to the elite who have nothing to worry about. Absolutely. But the middle class, I wonder why would they like to stay here? And all of these things have resulted in the economic depression because Pakistan has gone from bad to worse over the last several years, and political instability being the main contributor. You might have IMF for now, but IMF is only about taking more loans. It is not about economic improvement as such through your own efforts, through your own reforms, and through improvement in your institutions and so on and so forth, through creating more job opportunities and so on. It is only a tool to ensure that we don't default at best. And it helps the elites. For example, as soon as the news comes that the IMF meeting is scheduled, board meeting is scheduled for 25th, the stock market goes up. And when it will be approved on 25th, stock market will again go up. But it has nothing to do with the common Pakistanis who wonder, what am I in this whole country? What is the celebration about? If I was not getting 2 meals a day, I still don't get 2 meals a day. And
or even less.
People, and the people, more people go below the poverty line with each passing day. So what is it for them? And they are questioning that thing. Not just the poor people below the poverty line, but those in the middle class also. What am I in this whole country? Because I am not part of the ruling elite, and I don't get anything. So it creates a kind of depression, and it also creates a negative thing about the political class, which is what the establishment always has wanted. The political class is should be considered as one who are the bad people, and because of them, Pakistan has not moved forward, and so on and so forth.
We've flourished, exactly. No, absolutely right. And on that note, like IMF is referred to as the lender of the last resort. That means that we have already hit rock bottom, and that is why any country, including Pakistan, goes towards the IMF because the situation is so dire. And I've taken so much of your time, but before I let you go, I just have one thing, and I derived that from what you shared as well. A very key point that you mentioned somewhere in the middle when we were discussing that one way that this process, this entire proposed bill, this crisis can be resolved is that if the Supreme Court takes an anticipatory measure. So basically, they act before it is proposed.
Yeah,
and,
I think they should, and there would be, I think, petitions being filed by some lawyers in the next few days. And just to share with you that just a few hours ago, Salman Akram Raja, who's a brilliant lawyer as well as the Secretary General of PTI, his house was surrounded by the Punjab police, and his road was blocked to put pressure and to negotiate something. So we can expect anything. Such a decent and educated person can be targeted like this. But I'm sure that some of his fellow lawyers and others would be going to the Supreme Court in the next few days. And Supreme Court, hopefully, the senior judges of the Supreme Court should move themselves to preempt any such movement towards this amendment.
This violation. Perfect. No, thank you so much, sir, for your
Thank you
time.
so much. Thank you.
It was lovely speaking with you.